Obviously, first step is to take your wheels off, secure the truck on stands. Next, we're going to take the axle shaft out of the axle tube, removing these 8 19mm bolts. Have a catch can ready because your differential oil will come pouring out. Next, you're going to need to take this red-orange retainer clip out with a flathead screwdriver, and then use a magnetic tool to get out the key. Next, you're going to need to use this special socket, 6-pointed thing to take out the bearing nut. You can pick these up at your local auto parts store for like 10 bucks. Mine required a little bit of modification. I had to grind the teeth to be a little smaller to fit in the circular notches of this specific nut. There shouldn't be a lot of torque on this guy. It should come off really easily. Now that the hub is loose, we're going to have to take it off. I use a pry bar to wiggle. So pounding the studs out, use a piece of steel or something strong to bring your hammer up away from the possibility of hitting this surface here. You don't want to damage this surface. That's your gasket surface. That makes a seal. You need it flat. Alright, so once you got all the studs out, you can just separate the two parts, and voila! This is your hub, and you're going to need to rebuild that with new bearings, seals, and then this guy just gets scrapped. So I use a flathead screwdriver to gently go around and pry up the seal. So the inner bearing just comes right out. In order to get the outer bearing out, you take a punch and hit the inner bearing a few times backwards, like as if you were seating it, to loosen this ring, which is down in there. Then use some needle nose pliers to go down in there and grab this ring, compress it, and lift it up out. Now just use your punch and your hammer to drive out the bearing races. The outer bearing and race come out as one piece. Once you've set the bearing in and then pounded the race on top of the bearing in, go ahead and install your clip. So freeze your race first, that way it's a little bit smaller and it slides in a lot easier, and then you can start pounding it in with an old race, set it on top, and use a flat piece of metal on top of that to equalize your blow so you don't put it in crooked. And then once it gets to a certain point, you're going to need to take that race off and continue using this guy, your punch, very gently all around in a circle to set it in finally, because you're going to go past the first lip. And if you keep using this as you go past the first lip, you'll end up setting this old bearing in there as well, this old race in there as well, and you don't want to do that because then you'll end up with two races. Next, go ahead and drop your new bearing in. I always recommend cleaning all these parts off with some brake cleaner or some solvent of some kind that doesn't leave a residue, so you get the manufacturing, the shipping, oil off of it. That oil doesn't necessarily need to be or want to be in your gears. Then set your new seal on, get it pretty flat, and then set that guy in with a flat piece over the top to make sure it sets in straight. Again, that seal is a dry install. Make sure the surface is completely clean. No grease whatsoever on that. And your hub is rebuilt. Now, the next step is to clean off your new rotors. So get the manufacturing and shipping oil off those rotors. And then pound your studs and your rotor together. So like I said, pound on your studs, do them in a star pattern just to make sure it seats straight. And then this guy will be ready to go on the truck when you rebuild the brake shoes and the brake pads. So with your completed hub, you slide it on and then use some sort of weight distribution block, soft thing, you know, wood, ideal. And set it over the hub and smack it on there to seat the rear seal. And it takes a lot of force to smack it on there, but you know, check it every once in a while, be gentle with it, make sure it seats on straight, and then make sure it's back as far as it was when you first started, and then you'll know it'll be seated. Next, we're going to install the nut. When you thread it on, be extremely careful not to cross thread it. I suggest using 2 hands for this. Alright, there, it's on there now. And just use your hand to get it on all the way. Now move over to your torque wrench, set it to 52, and torque it. So the way this works is you tighten the axle nut to 52 foot-pounds. Then you back it off until it's loose, and then use your hand to tighten it until you line it up with a keyhole, and you want it at like 0 foot-pounds. You don't want it tight at all. It needs to be backed off and then barely cinch down till it lines up with a keyhole, and stick your key in, and then put the clip on. Next, clean your axle and put the gasket on it, and then slide it in there. Torque the bolts in a star pattern to 136 foot-pounds. And then also use some thread locker on those bolts. Fire. Oh, they just put out the fire in the center of the highway. Yeah. Oh, fuck, yo. Woo! That was a tire right there, probably. I got it on video. That was fucking... Woo!
I thought that's what I'm scared of.
Oh, whoa.
What is that? Oh, jeez.
I'm gonna step back. I don't want no debris flying at us.